Hello and welcome to Conversations in Public Relations. I'm Mary Fletcher Jones. Today I'm honored to have guest Amy Neiberger-Miller. We're in the offices of the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. Amy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Amy, your work has been phenomenal here. You've worked with the national media, you've worked on incredibly sensitive topics and with myriad publics. I'm curious, what learning can you pass on to us as communicators, maybe some of our younger communicators, even our veteran communicators, about what you've learned about public affairs and public relations? I've heard you say things like, sometimes you can help a reporter take a different take on an angle, or you have to educate them about, approaching families sensitively. What can you share with us? Just some good tips.
Well, I think you don't have to capitulate to every demand the press make. You can talk with them about what's acceptable and what's appropriate. I've had reporters come to me and say, well, I have to have an interview with a family in their home. Mm-hmm. And I've said, well, you know what? I do public affairs work for TAPS. I don't do interviews in my home. Mm-hmm. Chances are pretty high we're not going to find a family that will do that.
Right.
But we can make some other options available. For example, we could do an interview in our office and try to make it feel rather home-like. Mm-hmm. We can schedule an interview at another location that feels more home-like but is not a studio.
Right.
And so we'll talk with reporters about how they can still get the story they would like, get the feel they would like, but also preserve the sensitivity and the privacy for a family that needs it and that has requested it. If the family is sharing about some of the most painful moments in their lives, these are very small things mm-hmm. that we're asking. And also,
so you don't always have to follow their lead.
You don't.
Really.
You really don't have to always follow their lead. Are there times where you have
given up a story because you just felt like the reporter was taking in a direction that was,
just not appropriate?
Right.
Or just was unrealistic?
Okay.
There are, a lot of the reporters I work with are great. Occasionally, I will get one that calls that has a very prescriptive formula that is just not realistic. Wants a family that meets a whole range of criteria and, is willing to allow all kinds of access and, just things that are just very difficult to find. And I'll explain to them, well, what you're asking for is going to be very difficult to find. And I'm not sure we can do that. Now, you could look at it in a different way. Mm-hmm. So like if their core issue is more they're covering a particular program or they want to focus on a particular topic related to grief and loss. Well, could we look at this in a different way and not so we're looking for, I'm not a casting agent.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard too because the deadlines they have are very difficult to meet. Mm-hmm. They're very tight. Sometimes we do have to respond very quickly. When the Fort Hood shooting happened, mm-hmm. and we had a double effect that happened here. One was media calling that needed to find out information. We also have an office at Fort Hood that was full of widows and children about to go on a field trip that had been locked down. And so our staff and the families were actually locked inside the office for several hours. And so here we were communicating with the national media about what was going on, how we were responding, how the situation was at our office, and how everyone there was safe. And then we also had a ripple effect within the survivor community that we also needed to talk about, which was that for 25,000 surviving families, they turned on their television sets and found out that a number of other families were going to be notified of their loved ones' deaths, just like they had.
What brought back all those memories?
It was very much a collective flashback.
Mm-hmm.
Our call center volume actually spiked over 250%
wow.
Within hours of the shooting and all the media coverage that happened, and stayed that way for over a week because we had many families calling in who needed extra support and care, who needed to talk with other people because of what had happened. I would say that some of the things I've learned are you should never, I don't want to say you should not assume that that someone who's been through a trauma is not open to sharing. Because sometimes they do want to share and that's part of their healing. But you also should not assume that every family is open.
Right.
And some families are not able to be open, and may never be able to be open and share and talk. And as a result of that, their privacy should be respected. We very much support families wherever they're at on that issue. And that's important to us. And I think having that clarified as an organization is really important, because if we had conflicting sentiments about that within our organization, I think it would be really hard for us.
In terms of your media relations.
In terms of media relations, because, how would we properly prioritize? The priority is on families.
How would you recommend that a public relations practitioner respond, for these kind of situations, to a gross inaccuracy? Has that ever happened, or even just mistakes? And then what would you do as a public affairs counselor, for a highly sensitive topic? How do you try to correct it? Do you contact a reporter? What is your tactic for something like that?
Well, with something like that, if it's something grossly inaccurate or extremely offensive, I actually had a situation where a family called the office, and it had been reported in the media the day after their loved one's funeral that he had died by suicide, and the family had not been told that.
Oh, dear me.
So they wake up the day after their loved one's funeral, they're still reeling in shock and horror that this has happened, that their loved one has died. There's a lot of questions about that. There are actually procedures the military has where they go through investigations and things. So the family would not have been told that early, most likely.
Right.
And to open up their newspaper the day after their loved one's funeral and have that there. And, what do you do? And so in a case like that, I actually called the newspaper. And what it was someone had leaked information to them about that. And, there are also reporters and publications that are very respectful of families and privacy, that keep that information close to the vest, and that say, maybe down the road, when we're covering this issue later, we might want to talk to that family.
Right. So they're not going to burn that bridge.
I actually had a reporter come to me recently who said to me, our newspaper did not cover this when it happened because we just felt it was too painful for the family for us to do that. But I wanted to find out, could you ask the family if they are open now, more than a year after this has happened, to share if they ever would like to? We're available, and we're interested in speaking with them if they are interested in speaking with us.
That sounds like a good ideal for the media, is to cover the events, but with a respect, and preserving the dignity for the family. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Amy. I learned a lot, and thank you for your great work here at TAPS.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for coming.